The Tellarite Consul Yaris leaned forward across the meeting table and slammed his fist down, screaming at the human diplomat, Richard Reyes. "Your species is a plague upon the galaxy. Look at the primitive carnage and horror you have wrought on each other throughout your short history. You are nothing but a violent, emotionally unstable menace to galactic peace." Richard recoiled from the force of Yaris's verbal onslaught, but knew that if he failed to convince the Galactic Council, and Consul Yaris in particular, of humanity's worth, Earth could potentially face invasion and destruction at the hands of the technologically superior Council races. Humanity's rapid technological progress since achieving interstellar flight had unnerved many Council members, who now viewed Earth as a dangerous wild card that needed to be contained or eliminated. The Galactic Council headquarters on planet Tellus Prime loomed around them, a cold, gleaming labyrinth of austere corridors and chambers. Richard had been urgently summoned here to represent humanity in the most critical consultation of Earth's history. The Council planned to vote on a resolution proposed by Consul Yaris to strictly sanction Earth and place the human homeworld under military blockade. They saw humans as a chaotic, immature species that could destabilize the galaxy if left unchecked. In hours of heated closed-door debates, Richard had passionately defended humanity, highlighting mankind's greatest innovations, cultural and scientific achievements, and heroic sacrifices. He painted a picture of humans as a young but vibrant people with vast potential to contribute to the galactic community, if only given a chance. But Yaris and the other counselors remained highly skeptical. Richard realized he needed a bold gambit to shift the Council's perception. In a moment of inspiration, he challenged Yaris directly. "If you're so sure we humans are nothing but primitive savages, then come see for yourself. I invite you to join me on a secret fact-finding mission to Earth. Observe humanity firsthand before judging us." To Richard's surprise, Yaris agreed, seeing an opportunity to covertly gather evidence to bury humanity once and for all. Soon, the odd couple, an alien consul and human diplomat, would be secretly touring Earth, with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. The metropolis of New York rose up around Richard and Yaris as they stepped out onto the bustling streets. Yaris's eyes darted about, scanning the towering skyscrapers and throngs of humans rushing by. Richard guided him towards a large, gleaming building with the words, "New York Presbyterian Hospital," emblazoned above the entrance. "This is one of our premier medical facilities," Richard explained as they walked through the automatic doors. "I think you'll be impressed by the level of care and technology we have here." Yaris grunted non-committally, his gaze roving over the sterile white walls and polished linoleum floors. "We'll see about that. Tellarite medical science is leagues beyond anything you primitive humans could muster." Before Richard could respond, a cacophony of sirens and screeching tires shattered the calm. Ambulances screamed into the hospital bay, their lights flashing urgently. EMTs leapt out, rushing gurneys with bloodied and battered patients into the ER. "What's happening?" Yaris demanded, his eyes wide. "A major accident," Richard said grimly. "Multiple vehicles, lots of casualties." They watched in awe as the ER burst into controlled chaos. Doctors barked orders, nurses darted between gurneys, and machines beeped and whirred. It was a dance of life and death, and the human medical team moved with breathtaking precision and speed. Hours passed in a blur of blood, sweat, and tears. Richard and Yaris observed silently from the sidelines as the doctors fought to save every last patient. Their hands were a blur as they stitched wounds, set bones, and pumped chests. Suddenly, a commotion drew their attention. On a gurney lay a badly injured patient, his features obscured by blood and bruising. But as the doctors cut away his clothes, they gasped in shock. Beneath the shredded fabric lay the unmistakable anatomy of a Tellarite. Yaris's jaw dropped. "That's one of my observers. I sent him to gather information on Earth, but I never thought..." The human doctors, to their credit, barely missed a beat. They set to work on the Tellarite with the same fierce dedication and skill they had shown all day. Hours more passed as they labored to save the alien's life. Finally, the lead doctor emerged from the operating room, his scrubs drenched in sweat and blood. "He'll make it," he announced wearily. "We've done all we can. Now it's up to him." Yaris stared at the doctor in disbelief. You saved him. Even though he's not human. Even though you had no idea what he was." The doctor shrugged, managing a tired smile. "Hey, that's just what we do. Every life is precious, human or not." As they left the hospital, Yaris was uncharacteristically quiet. Richard could practically hear the gears turning in the Tellarite's head. The next day, Richard had another surprise in store. He brought Yaris to the United Nations headquarters, where a major summit was underway. World leaders from every nation had gathered to discuss global issues like climate change, poverty, and disease. As they took their seats in the gallery, Yaris scoffed. "I can't imagine you humans agreeing on anything. You're far too fractious and aggressive." But as the summit progressed, Yaris's tune began to change. He watched in amazement as the human leaders engaged in spirited but respectful debate. They listened to each other's concerns, sought common ground, and hammered out compromises for the greater good. A hushed murmur rippled through the room as an alien ambassador took the podium. Yaris shot Richard a sharp look. "I thought all aliens were banned from Earth." Richard just smiled enigmatically as the ambassador began to speak. "People of Earth," the alien began, "we have watched your progress with great interest. You have come so far in such a short time. Your potential is vast, and we believe you have much to offer the galactic community. We urge you to give humanity a chance to prove itself on the galactic stage." Yaris shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his doubts growing by the minute. Could he have been wrong about humans all along? Suddenly, a deafening bang echoed through the chamber. Screams filled the air as armed intruders burst in, weapons dripping. "Nobody move," the leader shouted. "We have the entire assembly hostage. Any alien scum that dares to meddle in Earth's affairs will be executed, starting with the ambassador." In the chaos, Richard bolted to his feet. "Let me talk to them," he insisted to the security forces. "I can end this peacefully." Yaris watched, his hearts pounding, as Richard approached the hostage-takers with his hands raised. The human's voice was calm and steady as he negotiated, using all his diplomatic skill to find a resolution. Long, tense minutes dragged by. Finally, miraculously, the intruders lowered their weapons. Hostages streamed to safety as the crisis ended without bloodshed. Yaris sat back, his pupils dilating. In the span of a few short days, Richard had shattered every preconception he had about humans. These people were not the primitive savages he had imagined. They were complex, compassionate, and courageous, flawed, yes, but also filled with incredible potential. Richard approached, a knowing look in his eye. "So, Consul Yaris, have you seen enough to change your mind about us humans?" Yaris hesitated, then slowly nodded. I think I have. But there is one more thing I need to see. One more place you must take me before I can make my final decision." Richard smiled, a glint of anticipation in his eye. "I know just the place. Buckle up, Consul. We've saved the best for last." Richard turned to Yaris as they exited the UN building. "We're not done yet. There's one more place I need to show you." Yaris grunted, his tusks twitching with curiosity. "Where now, human?" "Ever heard of NORAD?" Richard asked as they boarded a military transport. The Tellarite shook his head. Richard explained as the aircraft lifted off. "North American Aerospace Defense Command. It's a joint U.S.-Canadian operation, hidden deep in the Rocky Mountains." Yaris snorted. "Another primitive fortification, no doubt." "You might be surprised," Richard replied with a smile. Hours later, they touched down near a nondescript entrance carved into a mountainside. Armed guards swarmed the transport, weapons ready. "State your business," one barked. Richard produced a badge. "Richard Reyes, diplomat. I have clearance from the president herself." The soldiers' eyes widened. They ushered Richard and Yaris through a gauntlet of security checkpoints, retinal scans, DNA analysis, full-body searches. Yaris grumbled, "Is all this truly necessary?" "Absolutely," Richard replied. "This facility was built to withstand nuclear war." The Tellarites scoffed. "Nuclear weapons? Surely you jest." Richard's face darkened. "I assure you, we don't joke about such things." They descended in an elevator, plummeting deep into the earth. When the doors opened, Yaris gasped. Before them stretched a vast underground complex. Humans bustled about, monitoring banks of screens and holograms. The air thrummed with barely contained energy. A stern-faced man in a crisp uniform approached. "I'm General Thompson. Welcome to NORAD." He led them through the facility, explaining its systems and capabilities. Yaris' eyes widened as he took in the array of technology. "This can't be," the Tellarite muttered. "Your people are too primitive for such—" His words were cut off by a piercing alarm. Red lights flashed as screens lit up with urgent warnings. "Priority 1 alert," a technician shouted. "Multiple inbound objects, hypersonic velocities." General Thompson sprang into action. "Source?" "Extraterrestrial, sir. Impact projections coming up now." A hologram flickered to life, showing Earth with glowing red impact sites scattered across populated areas. "My God," Richard breathed. Thompson barked orders. "Scramble fighters, ready missile defenses. I want strike packages on my desk in 2 minutes." The command center erupted into controlled chaos. Yaris watched in stunned silence as humans coordinated a response to potential annihilation with terrifying efficiency. Suddenly, a technician called out, "Sir, reclassifying targets. It's debris, a meteor shower burning up in the atmosphere." The tension bled out of the room as the alert was downgraded. Thompson sighed. "Stand down, people. Good work." He turned to Richard and Yaris. "This happens more often than you'd think. We have to be ready for anything. Asteroid impacts, alien invasions, you name it." Yaris stared at the general, then at Richard. His worldview was crumbling around him. These humans, who he dismissed as savages, possessed not only the means but the will to defend themselves against cosmic threats. As they left the mountain complex, Yaris was uncharacteristically quiet. Richard could see the Tellarites' perception of humanity shifting before his eyes. Richard turned to Yaris as they left NORAD. "I think we need a change of pace. How about we witness one of humanity's greatest achievements?" Hours later, they stood on a viewing platform at Cape Canaveral, Florida. The air buzzed with excitement as countdown echoed across the launch site. A behemoth rocket towered before them, loaded with an interplanetary probe bound for the outer reaches of the solar system. Flames erupted from its base, and it slowly rose skyward with earth-shaking power. Yaris's eyes widened as the rocket accelerated, leaving a trail of smoke and fire. "Incredible," he breathed. Inside the control room, screens flickered with data as engineers and scientists worked in perfect synchronization. "Trajectory nominal," called out one technician. "All systems green," reported another. Richard watched Yaris take it all in. The meticulous planning, the audacious spirit of exploration. The Tellarites' preconceptions about humanity's capabilities were visibly crumbling. After the launch, they toured the Kennedy Space Center. Yaris marveled at exhibits chronicling the Apollo missions and plans for Mars colonization. Then they came to a secluded area. Behind thick glass sat a sleek silver craft of obvious alien origin. "What is this?" Yaris asked, stunned. "Roswell," Richard said quietly. "We've been studying it for decades, trying to unlock its secrets." Yaris's mind reeled as Richard explained how humans had managed to reverse engineer anti-gravity systems and faster-than-light travel from this single crashed ship. Later, as they walked the grounds, Yaris spoke candidly. "I see now that beneath the surface chaos, your people possess remarkable scientific acumen. Your resilience and ingenuity are impressive." For the final stop, Richard brought Yaris to a modified aircraft nicknamed the Vomit Comet. As it climbed steeply, then plummeted, Yaris found himself floating weightlessly. At first hesitant, he soon gave in to childlike glee, somersaulting through the cabin alongside grinning human crew members. For a few transcendent moments, all his prejudices fell away. Tumbling joyfully in zero-G, Yaris glimpsed humanity's limitless potential. These beings he'd dismissed as primitives suddenly seemed destined for greatness on a galactic scale. The sleek Tellarite spacecraft sliced through the void, its hull gleaming under the distant starlight. Inside, Richard and Yaris sat in contemplative silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the remarkable experiences they'd shared on Earth. Richard gazed out the viewport, marveling at the cosmic tapestry before him. "You know, Yaris, I never thought I'd be out here among the stars. It's humbling." Yaris grunted, his tusks twitching. "You humans have a peculiar talent for surprising others, and yourselves." Suddenly, a harsh buzz filled the cabin. Red warning lights flashed across the control panel. "What's happening?" Richard asked, leaning forward. Yaris's fingers danced across the controls. "Distress signal, human outpost on Deimos." Richard's eyes widened. "We have to help them!" "No," Yaris said firmly. "It's too dangerous for a civilian." "But—" "This is Tellarite business now," Yaris cut him off. "We must investigate potential violations of Martian neutrality." The ship changed course, accelerating towards the rust-colored moon. As they approached, scanners painted a grim picture. "Habitat breach," Yaris reported. "Contamination spreading. We're going in." Minutes later, they stood at the airlock, sealed in bulky exosuits. Richard's heart pounded as the outer door hissed open. They stepped onto Deimos's ravaged surface. Crimson dust swirled around them, carried on toxic winds. Jagged shards of rock pelted their suits. "Stay close," Yaris ordered, his voice crackling through the comm. They trudged towards the outpost, fighting against the hellish environment. Richard stumbled, nearly falling into a steaming fissure. At last, they reached the breach. Yaris pried open the twisted hatch, revealing a nightmarish scene within. Bodies lay scattered throughout the corridor, their flesh pale and desiccated. Richard recoiled in horror. "Oh God," he whispered. A faint cry echoed from deeper inside. They pressed on, following the sound to a sealed chamber. Through the observation window, they saw the survivors, a handful of terrified researchers and a small girl clutching a stuffed animal. Yaris studied the readouts, his expression grim. "The pathogen, it's unprecedented. If it spreads—" "We have to get them out," Richard insisted. Yaris shook his head. "We can't risk it. The only way to contain this is—" He reached for the environmental controls. "No!" Richard lunged for the Tellarite's arm, but felt a sudden searing pain. He looked down to see a hairline crack in his suit's forearm. The world began to spin. As consciousness faded, Richard saw the stuffed toy sail through the air, passing through the barrier to land in the little girl's arms. Then darkness claimed him. Yaris stood alone, surrounded by death. The weight of galaxies pressed down upon him as he made his choice. With trembling fingers, he activated the bomb. The Tellarite ship accelerated away from Deimos just as the moon shattered, taking its deadly secret with it. Yaris stared at the expanding cloud of debris, his heart heavy with the burden of unspoken truths.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.